Our fourth pillar of recovery is going to occur immediately after the resolution and response to that event. Now, when we talk about recovery, just as we did the other three pillars, there are a wide variety of events that we need to be prepared to recover from. And so basically, we divide recovery into two different categories. We look at what does the short-term immediate recovery look like? And then we also need to look at what does that long-term recovery look like? When we're looking at short-term recovery, we're looking at recovery for most often the first 7 to 10 days at the longest. And what we're looking at in that immediate time is how are we making sure we're taking care of everyone? The congregation, the potential family members of victims, the victims themselves. What are we looking at for continuity of services? Because if the church was destroyed in a fire or there was active violence and it's a crime scene, we know that we still need to gather. We recognize the church is the people, not the facility. But what facility are we going to go to? Whether it's a public park nearby, whether it is joining with another local congregation and working together to make arrangements for use of the building. Those are all of our real short-term aspects that we need to address. So it goes beyond the day of when we're trying to reunite families, we're trying to determine exactly who was impacted, what the accountability of individuals looks like. What does continuity of services look like for the organization? So when we're looking at short-term recovery, that one of the areas that we really look at is, are there other ministries in your geographic area in the community that you can in advance set up plans with, so that if something goes on at your facility and you're not able to provide internal spiritual care, you have pastors, you have Stephen ministers, or whatever that looks like in your denomination or faith group, able to come in and assist the congregants in your organization. We want to look at not only the individuals that were affected because they were there, but we also know if we end up with victims, we may have 5 or 6 family members to each victim that are trying to come in, want to be involved, want to know what's going on, and we have to be prepared to meet their needs also. And those needs may be across the board, from financial to emotional to spiritual to even short-term housing. How do we look at this when we have individuals that are coming from outside of our community in the event of active violence or a large-scale event? When everybody is still trying to figure out exactly what happened and what this is going to look like, and that processing is taking place, those relationships with other clergy in the community are absolutely crucial. But for long term, we really want to look at what does that look like for us as we rebuild. When we look at long term, if we reopen a building or the damage wasn't that bad, so we're able to continue services where we're at, we want to be prepared, because we'll have everything from people who are just curious and may want to arrive and see where this particular incident took place, up to those that may have more harmful intentions and may want to protest or may want to film videos on the location and are not at all sensitive to the congregants, what has taken place there. And so we want to make sure that we're prepared for all of those types of circumstances that may occur. Really, when we look at long-term recovery, there are several areas that are going to be critical. One of them is going to be dependent on how much damage did the actual physical property of the church sustain. And so when we look at, was there a structure fire? Was there a large-scale active violence event? Then we really have to look at a longer term while we rebuild process of where are we going to meet, what is this going to look like for us? Because again, we know the church is the people, but we have to make certain that we're able to have a place we can congregate. And what is that going to look like for us? We want to look at what does your church board or leadership look like? Because if the catastrophic event involves senior leadership, are there other leaders that are familiar with the plan and know they're going to step into place? So when we're looking at long-term, again, continuity of services absolutely bleeds into that long-term, but we also have to be prepared for visitors. We know sometimes there will be individuals that may arrive, they may deny that the action ever took place there. They may either try to minimize or may try to grandstand on that event for different reasons, including politics at times. We need to be prepared because we know some people will want to come to the physical location where an incident occurred, and they're basically there as tourists to see what they can see. And so we want to make sure that we're prepared. What does our safety and security ministry look like in this way? Do we have partners that are willing to come in and provide that? Because if we had active violence and it involved the safety and security ministry from our organization, we're going to need to rely on others to come in because those people may not be ready to serve emotionally and psychologically, even if they're physically okay. One of the biggest challenges that we see in recovery is going to be reunification, and we're going to see that in a variety of incidents. If we have any sort of missing child all the way up through active violence, we know parents and grandparents are going to immediately want to know where their children are. And so we have to have a plan in place to where we can relocate children if necessary for their safety, and ultimately locations we can take them to so that we can make sure as people come in and they pick up their children or their grandchildren that we're still abiding by our child protection policies. We're making sure children are picked up by people that are able and registered to pick them up. And we're making sure that we have all of the children. And so this is a huge aspect. But it's not only children that we need to be concerned about in reunification. Some of our ministries have huge outreaches to special needs communities. And so we may have those with functional or cognitive impairments that are meeting in a Sunday school classroom. What does that look like for that group of people? How are we going to reunify them with their family members or with others that have brought them to our house of worship that particular day? Beyond reunification, we may be looking at how are we going to communicate. We know the media, if it's an event that has been broadcast out through public safety, may actually arrive at the campus fairly quickly. Who are the media spokespeople? What does that look like? Who is authorized to talk on behalf and give a statement on behalf of the organization? Once the response to any type of event ends, that's where recovery immediately begins. And so we have to be able to transition immediately into what are the short-term recovery goals we have, what are our policies and procedures as it relates to those specific facets like media representation and other aspects. After any event, we always want to come back and revisit all of our pillars. So after a critical incident, I want to look at, could we have prepared in a different way? Is it something, if we had done something different, could we have prevented it? In our response, did our response follow best practices, our internal policies and procedures? And then with our recovery, were we able to recover as well as possible? And so we have to always remember that this is a cycle through the 4 pillars. It's not that we've gotten to recovery and we're done and now we're just going to wait for the next incident. We always want to be looking at our preparation, our prevention, our response, and our recovery elements so that we are best prepared in the event that an incident takes place.